Hello and welcome to Slogging It. We have reached week 6. Toby Tarrant gave us until February, so we may still yet prove him right, but the trajectory that we're on would suggest otherwise. Great to have my two co-hosts with me. I will ask them both now how they are. Eugene, first this week. How are you, my friend?
Hello, Jono. I am good, thank you. We are about to go into lockdown as of 1 minute past midnight on Tuesday or Wednesday morning. So, yeah, I'm going to go get my hair cut tomorrow. For those of you, we're recording on Monday. Yeah, I'm going to go get my hair cut.
Right, okay. Get them to leave a little bit on, mate, because there's not that much left.
I teed it up.
Robert, we played golf today, didn't we?
Yes,
so I know that you're all right, but you might as well.
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I had my best ever round of golf today, which was lovely. I'm just interested in the latest sponsorship that we could be getting for Eugene's haircut, which I can only assume is coming from Pledge or some other kind of wood cleaning product.
Very good.
We need to ask Woodstock for some linseed oil.
Yeah.
You get a tan, which is something that we'll be talking about in a couple of weeks' time. First of all, must mention Big Smoke, one of our partners. So thank you to them for their continued support. For those of you that don't know, I assume most of you will by now, every Friday night at about 8 o'clock, we are now doing Instagram Lives. We get some amazing interaction with pros who just come on, join the call, have a 10, 15-minute chat with us about different bits and pieces. This Friday, it looks like we're going to get Joshua Da Silva who made his debut for the West Indies this week, which is very, very exciting. Cool. Along with Mark Adair, the current Irish international, and a couple of other guests. So please do join us for that. Talking of Josh, obviously this week in cricket is something we look to cover off early in the podcast. The West Indies, we'll come on to Josh in a minute, but the West Indies have played 2 tests in New Zealand. Some would say negative captaincy, winning the toss twice and bowling twice, although it did look green on both occasions. But New Zealand have batted once on both occasions, and the West Indies have really struggled.
Yeah, I think it was green. I don't think them winning the toss and bowling was the where they got it wrong. This West Indies bowling attack is frustrating for me. When it came over here in the summer, it was lauded as the best bowling attack since that great bowling attack, which is a big thing to say. And to be fair, they bowled well here. I'd give them that. Certainly in the first test, they bowled well, and then kind of let themselves go a bit. But they just didn't bowl very well. They're on that wicket, certainly in the second test, that if you run in, they saw when you bowled it, just hit a length, hit an area. Yes, it was quick. But for me, they looked like 15-year-old bowlers that had just found out first played on a quick wicket.
Weren't New Zealand 22 without loss from 2 overs in the first innings of the second test? I mean, I remember I was watching it, obviously because Josh being involved and obviously knowing him so well, but Gabriel, yes, he had a bit of a gale at his back, like 120 kph wins and stuff, but he just kept bowling Tom Latham, long half volleys and full bungers on leg stump. He just kept plonking through mid-wicket. Huge, I don't know if you got to see much of it.
I did. I watched a couple of hours. I was up into the late night watching some cricket. You do what you have to. Yeah, it's interesting you talking about the bowling. I could argue the same with the batting. I watched most of the West Indies bat, which, if I'm honest, didn't take very long. So yeah, I mean, it was one of those where I think there was only 2, maybe 3 50s across the 4 innings. And again, when you think about it from an application point of view, I mean, the debut boy came in and showed everyone how to bat. But yeah, we'll get onto Josh in a bit. But yeah, their batting was just nowhere, in my opinion.
The one thing I will say about the West Indies batting against that New Zealand bowling attack, which for me is the most underrated bowling attack in world cricket. The 3 main seamers of Southey, Bolt, and Wagner. I mean, Wagner's 2 in the world now.
Good South African heritage.
2 proper, yeah. Let's not start with that one. But But for me, Bolt and Southey are both brilliant long format bowlers. Especially, you just saw them on that pitch, and the new lad Jameson, was it, that come in? I mean, he can bowl quick. But they came in. Southey just runs in. He knows what length to bowl on green wickets or on wickets with any kind of assistance. He's why he's always done well over here. He runs in, pulls it just for the length. He kisses the pitch as well as anyone. People talk about Anderson and the way he gets it to go and shape. Southey is possibly not quite as good, but when he gets it going, that shape away from the bat, and it goes late, and it just seems he only bowls at 81, 82 miles an hour. But you look at how the ball goes past the top of the stumps from that full of a length, and it is always rising free to the keeper. So I think any batting side, especially when you bowled first and they've got 500 on a green one, any batting side against that bowling lineup is going to sit there and go, we are on a hiding to nothing here.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure I agree. I'd say maybe if someone's got 500 on a green one, it's probably a decent wicket to bat on. I think that there's a lot of the West Indian players, the top six. So there's a guy called Mashal who I commentate on Guerrilla Cricket with, who runs the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, which is an amazing podcast, by the way. People should really check that out, especially if they've got an interest in West Indian cricket. And he was, there's a lot of people calling for a lot of that top six to go. Jermaine Blackwood got a 60-odd in the first dig. There were 3 50s in the second dig of the second test. Holder, Campbell and JDS. We'll talk about that in a sec. But, Roston Chase, for the last 2 years, has averaged, I think it's either 14 or 19 in Test cricket. Darren Bravo obviously had some time away from the game. We know he's obviously a fantastic batter, but he's really struggled. He's probably still trying to get used to Test cricket again. Obviously, he had a fallout with the WICB a couple of years ago. I think there's still some underlying problems in West Indian cricket. But I think what we did see, having now been given his proper opportunity, Joshua Da Silva, who obviously was an overseas pro for me 2017, and is still a very, very good friend of mine. I've been texting his dad most of the week while I've been watching it. We spend more time texting each other than we do actually watching the cricket. But to come in, batting at 8, he's had to shepherd the tail in both innings, but got 3. Unlucky, try to leave one off Southey, just got a bottom edge through to the keeper in the first dig. But 57, and I was texting him last night, and he was saying Ross Taylor spoke to him. He turned down a single on 49 because he was trying to protect Shamar Holder. And then Josh has actually said to us, I think Eugene's one of the groups that we were asking him about it. Ross Taylor actually said to him at the time, he was like, fuck them, mate. You're on debut, get 50. Don't worry about them. You've worked so hard. You've got to this point. Don't throw it away. And I think everybody who knows him, I spent the next 15 minutes with my head behind a cushion, just thinking, don't get out now. Don't get out now. But to see him do that and achieve that, it was fantastic. I mean, you obviously know him well. I think it's very much a very proud moment for all of us, wasn't it?
Absolutely. The one thing I'll say is that shows the true character of the guy. It's team before. Yeah. There's no iron team. So, I mean, maybe Ross was a little bit offsides in saying that. I know from my perspective, I think it's the best thing you can do. For me, I'm sure he's won so many hearts and minds over, and specifically within the West Indies cricket side, to go, do you know what? He could have gone on and scored 100 and, got the West Indies, I don't know, 100, 150 ahead, and they could have won the game from there. You never know. Yeah. And look, I mean, hindsight's 20/20 and all that, but it didn't work out like that. And he still ended up scoring his 50. But I think from a hearts and minds point of view, he's done a fantastic job of winning over people. I mean, we've known that for as many years as we have. So yeah, I mean, he's a great kid, and looking forward to watching him in the future. That's for sure.
He's very popular in the West Indies camp as well. I think a young lad coming in. I think they've got a lot of respect for him. When we got left out of the Red Force one day side, and then became part of that West Indies emerging players side that famously won their one day tournament last season. And I think he's firmly on the map now. I think there are some people maybe worried that because he's opened in first class cricket, and because they got problems at the top of the order, that maybe they might ask him to open. There's a lot of people calling for that not to happen because they don't want that ruin him. Personally, I'd like to see him probably bat 6 and take the gloves, or bat 7 and take the gloves, or if and then longer term maybe bat at 5 if another wicketkeeper comes through. But I think they need to allow him to kind of bide his time as he grows into the side and Test cricket in general. But yeah, fantastic! Congratulations, Josh. We hopefully will have you on our Big Smoke Big Night in tomorrow evening, as this will come out on Thursday. Australia and India, the Aussie, it's been quite fair in the one-day stuff. I know that they've had a tour match, but with the first test due to start in a couple of days. Aussie's taking the one day as 2-1, but then the score lines reversed in the T20s with India winning that 2-1. What do we think?
Two very even sides, isn't it, really? Both of them, their bowling attacks are pretty nailed on, you'd say. Depends on whether India choose to go with a couple of spinners or not, but they'll shuffle their order about accordingly. Kohli, is he playing one test or has he come out?
Yeah, first test. I think he's got a baby on the way, hasn't he? So he's on.
Yeah, he has. I think that could be something that swings this. I think that Australian batting order with Smith, Huge will correct me on however I say this, Labuschagne or whatever his name is. What is it, Huge?
It's Labuschagne in Australia, but Labuschagne in South Africa. Yeah.
Yeah,
another
South
African heritage.
Spat something on the camera. Their sort of batting order within there. It's rumoured Warner's out, but they've got this lad that scored 1,000 runs in 4 knocks or whatever it is.
Cameron Green.
That looks a good player.
Isn't he the bowler, Cameron Green?
Not Cameron Green. Cameron Green's a bowler that got hit on the beam.
He's also a batsman, though.
No, fair play.
He doesn't open, though, does he?
No, it's Rem. It begins with R.
Don't know.
But yeah, so he. But there's rooms they might not pick him. There's 2 or 3 line in for that spot. So for me, that'll be where that series is won or lost. That sort of top order, top 4 battle, especially with no Kohli. They've got a lot of good players. Mind India have that. Sherry I can't seem to get a look in at the minute and stuff like that. Some of the guys that they're bringing through are very good. It should be a good series, to be fair. 2 good sides.
Just quickly before we go into the interview, Huge, some stories in the South African media regarding the England tour have come out. I'll be interested because I obviously heard this first from you the other day. What's the view on that? What are the current? I mean, obviously with the media, you can never quite tell how much of it's true and how much it's kind of pot stirring. But what's the view from the South African angle?
A lot of finger pointing is probably the best description I can give. South Africa are pointing at England, England are pointing at South Africa. It's just a mess, if I'm really honest. I think the first thing that England said was that they felt a little bit uneasy with the South African team meeting together and having a braai or a barbecue, and that they felt that they were not, adhering to protocol. And then you hear about England going and playing 8 rounds of golf across the. It's 8. I'll have you know. But yeah, 5 at one golf course, 3 at another. Yeah. So I mean, it's one of those where, it's one of those where you just go, you know what, let it be now. I know South Africa are feeling a little bit of pain at the moment because it's cost 30 million, or it's not generated 30 million. I can't remember. Rand, correct? Yeah, Rand. What's that? £1.5 million? Still a chunk of change.
But a lot of money in South Africa at the minute.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, I don't know the full story. I'm just going off what the media and the cricket writers are saying. So yeah, I suppose like everything, give it more time and we'll find out more details of what will happen. But for now, from a South African point of view, I'm just looking forward to the Sri Lanka interview starting on Boxing Day.
Sri Lanka interview starting on Boxing Day, or maybe even the series. Talking of interviews, we are shortly going to go into what is an amazing interview with our guest of this week, who is Luke Sutton, Somerset, amazing career at Lancashire and then finishing up at Derby. So that'll be in a second. But before we do that, obviously every week we discuss our allegiance with the Lord's Taverners, the fantastic cricketing charity trying to offer every child, no matter their circumstances, a sporting chance in life. Again, that text number to donate £3 is 70331. That's 70331, and you text TABS11 to donate that £3. Please make sure you are at least 16 and have the bill payer's permission before doing so. And on that note, just before the Luke Sutton interview, here is a note from the Lord's Taverners.
The Lord's Taverners is the UK's leading youth cricket and disability sports charity. We break down barriers and empower disadvantaged and disabled young people to fulfil their potential and build life skills. Our cricket programmes support some of the most marginalised and at-risk young people in the UK, using sport and recreation to build links and encouraging groups to play sport together. We tackle issues such as knife crime, unemployment, radicalisation and also isolation, something we are all feeling right now. Last year, our programmes impacted the lives of more than 12,000 young people, and with your support will help even more in the future. Find out more and make a donation at lordstaverners.org and help us to continue our life-changing work. Thank you.
So, hi Luke. We are joined today by Luke Sutton of Derbyshire, Somerset and Lancashire, 20-year career. Luke, pleasure to have you with us.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
So obviously there's, we'll come on to the main reason behind the interview in a minute, but this is your first book, Back from the Edge, which is obviously what we're going to discuss. There is a second book available that we're hoping you'll come on and discuss in a separate interview after Christmas. Just to give people a little bit of an insight into what the book is. I mean, having read it, we were chatting the other day, I read it cover to cover, couldn't put it down, just found it completely like nothing that I'd ever read before. So open, so honest, look at like dependence and recovery. But more importantly, I think what caused that eventual dependence. Can you talk us through the process of sitting down and writing it? It must have been quite a tough thing, to look that inwardly and go through that.
Well, weirdly, I know that would be a sort of sensible assumption, but I wasn't really. I think for me, once I made the decision to write the book, this was stuff I'd sort of kept to virtually myself, bar people very close to me, for kind of 7-8 years, and then the backstory behind it, it was a story over 20 years, 30 years, and so when I made the decision to start writing, it just poured out of me. And it's not a very long book, but it didn't take me long to write, because it was just all this stuff that I kind of, it was very therapeutic. I just wanted to share it, and it just poured out of me.
Do you think it helped with your recovery to go through that process?
Yeah, I do actually, because a big part of recovery is honesty, and getting honest with yourself and everything that's going on around you. You kind of live in this denial, and it's not from being a kind of bad person, it's just where you're stuck. And I think being truly honest, and I did want to write the book, and as you've said, it is brutally honest, and I guess for some people quite hard to read at times. It's so honest, and but I needed to do that, because it was like, this is me, and then anyone who meets me, I am being totally honest about my past and the mistakes and the recovery and the down and the up and everything in between. So it was a big part of my recovery.
I think we, as we said just before we started recording, that we want to go right back to the start and kind of figure out where things kind of started to ingrain themselves in your personality, I guess. So growing up, you spent the first 5 years of your life in Oman, moving then to Peru. Really interested that relationship with Gladys, I think, was the housekeeper while you were in Peru. Then you went to the Netherlands, where you became a fantastic swimmer. Then you went on to Millfield, which is obviously an amazing school that we'll come on to later on. But you said that you really wanted to fit in and almost be liked, and that must have been quite a tough, I know it was a tough situation for you to leave your mum and whatever. Do you think that the desire to be liked may have been from being thrust into a situation of boarding and, the deep end, sorry to coin a swimming phrase, so early on?
Yeah, it's difficult to know. It's like a kind of nature and nurture question, isn't it? You know, and I think you know, now I look back on things, I do think I had the characteristics from birth, just naturally, of potentially running into these sorts of mental health and addiction issues. But I think early on, the environments that I was in was, you know, did have a big impact on me. And Millfield was this kind of, you know, I've never seen a school like it. It's like excellence on steroids, and, you know, high performance on steroids. And, you know, I remember going to Milford Senior School, and I was just like looking at the sixth formers, and they just looked like they were from Hollywood. It was just, you know, it was mind blowing, the facilities, the scale. You know, I was good at cricket, but we had people at the school who were playing international rugby and in the Olympics, and it was just completely weird environment. And I guess ultimately I was just a really nervous, insecure, I guess insecure, just nervous, desperate to fit in. I know all kids are to some extent, but that desire to be popular, or not even be popular, just to fit in, was really powerful in me. And I guess in a kind of high octane environment, that got more, because it felt like there was even more to kind of fit in with, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. I was astounded to hear this. Jono talked about you swimming earlier, and I didn't know that you went to Millfield originally on a swimming scholarship, and then sort of moved into cricket later. About what age was that you sort of made the switch and the change? Was it, and what made you change over?
Yeah, it wasn't a sudden thing. It was a sort of a gradual transition from swimming into some more cricket and other sports, to be honest, because I was playing rugby and hockey, and I was just loving everything. I loved just getting stuck into all sorts of things. You know, the thing was, before I went to Millfield, I hadn't actually spent a lot of time in Europe, so I didn't know a lot of the mainstream. Like, cricket was really, really new to me.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, it was sort of this quintessentially English thing, you know, with T's and Y's and, you know, and there was a Moorishness to it. You know, it was like, maybe it was the addict in me. You know, I could get 30 runs, but hang on, I could get 50 runs, I could get 60 runs, or, you know, there was always this kind of more type thing.
Yeah.
So as I started to play cricket from 9-10 years old, I fell in love with all of those aspects of it and all the intricacies. And then there was that versus swimming, which I was, you know, I love competing. I love the sense of the water around me, but it's lonely swimming. You know, it's 5 o'clock in the morning looking at the bottom of a pool, and at Milford it's hardcore. You know, it was before school, lunchtime, and post school, and there was not a lot of time for anything else really. And I guess as I got better at cricket, I was just, you know, going into my teenage years, thinking, would I rather hang out with my mates and eat tea and score runs and take catches, or stare at the bottom of a pool? And it just kind of transitioned into, you know, moving away from swimming.
Yeah. Interesting. You talk about obviously the Millfield and the training. Obviously Millfield's renowned for producing some ridiculous sports people across a range of sports, and everyone sort of I've ever met and known comes out there with like an arrogance to themselves, and it seems like that's a pride that Millfield install into them. It's like a push. Do you think that's something that sort of contributed to the struggles you had going forward, and do you think it's a good thing that they do that?
It's a really, really good question. There definitely is that. You know, I think I write in the book, this hockey teacher had a massive influence on me. You know, he'd always say, listen, you know, we're already 1-0 up because we're Millfield. And, you know, and the swimming t-shirts we used to say just said, we swim fast. And it was just like, all the messaging is like, we're going to smash you and we're brilliant. So obviously, if you're a kid growing up in that, that's what you believe. And I do think that Millfield definitely prepared me for professional cricket. I don't know if I would have, you know, maybe, you know, I still think I was a fairly averagely talented player, but to survive, get into professional cricket and then survive, I think Millfield had a big part of it.
Yeah.
I think and different people react to that in different ways. I think for me, it's not real. That's the thing. It's not based on a grounding. So when I started to sort of be living in that world where, you know, my affirmation came from winning, my, you know, success was win or lose. Life was about win or lose. Win, we're all good. Lose, everything's bad.
Yeah.
I think that was born from that upbringing, and that got, I got into trouble with that because that's where I got my whole sense of purpose from. I didn't have anything deeper within, and so it's a really difficult one. I'm very grateful for what Millfield gave me. It's an amazing school in many aspects, but for where I am now, I had to really kind of rebuild and relearn a lot of the things that maybe I didn't learn at that time. Again, I hope that makes sense.
Moving away now from school, obviously you enjoyed, I say enjoyed, you had an amazing 20-year career at Somerset, Lancashire, Derbyshire. But by this point, obviously you'd almost realised to yourself that, you maybe consumed alcohol in different ways to other people. And so, your fitness allowed, and your work ethic allowed you to become a leader of men in dressing rooms, but your fitness also became a way of punishing yourself for, the kind of the drinking that you'd done either the night before or the week before or whatever. Do you think this kind of addictive trait, if you like, is within all sports people, given the highs that it can provide them at the top level?
Yeah, I think that professional sports people struggle with balance. It's obsessive, it's self-absorbed, it's hyper-focus, it's all of those things, and I think that's a very common characteristic. And it's a difficult balance between allowing those characteristics, like what I had, to flourish and to go, and also being able to just center it a little bit and kind of not get too caught up in that, because the extreme behavior will follow you in all aspects. It did with me. I would practice right-handed catching for an hour and a half without a break, just because I was obsessing about whether or not I could catch well enough with my right hand. Would be the same type of mentality that would go, right, when I'm going out and I'm going to drink, I'm going to do this better than anyone else in this room. And the point is that it eventually becomes unmanageable and you blow up. Well, I blew up, and being able to find that line is going to always be a constant challenge for professional sports people.
Do you think when things got to their kind of worst, if you like, prior to going into rehab, you talk about in the book, people have since come out and said that, they could tell that you weren't in a great place, but until Glenn and Mark found you in that, Altrincham bar on that, the day that was, let's call it, breaking point, people hadn't decided to, let's say, challenge you on it, hard enough, let's say. I know a couple of people have maybe mentioned it to you before that, but what would you say to people who think they might have a friend who is struggling but feels unsure about how to approach the subject?
Yeah. It's the key, really. I think, what was going on previously was I was not listening to anyone. I was not hearing it, but my behavior was annoying people. It was hurting people. It was disappointing people. It was all of those sorts of things. So the reaction often was, not intended in this way, but you're a bad person. I don't like you. You're a bad person. And I felt that shame. I felt it all because I knew the truth. So I would, in the dark of night, I'd think, oh my God, who are you, Luke? You're awful. You did this, you did that. And so what I would say to people, if you see someone behaving in those ways, I know it's hard, and it's particularly hard on family members, but try and remember that they're not a bad person. They're just a person in need of help. And shaming them out of it doesn't work. They already feel the shame. But just trying to step in there and go, listen, can we just talk about how you're behaving at the moment, and try and take the judgment out of it, and reach into that person is a better way. But I know it's really difficult, because when someone's behaving in those ways, you want to shout at them. You want to hate them. You might well hate them. And there was people I hurt badly in that time, and I've had to live with that and make up for it. But I know that shaming me at the time wouldn't have made any difference. I felt badly enough about who I was as it was.
Yeah, it's that bit of the book for me was one of the most sort of bit that grabbed me. And you sit there and go, like, when you talk about the fact your dad walked in, and then your mum and that type of thing was fascinating. You went to the Priory. A lot of people will know what the Priory is. Some people may not. Can you explain a little bit about it and sort of what goes off?
Yeah, there's no bloody jacuzzis in there. That's the first thing I'd like to say. If there are, I didn't find them. Yeah, there's different Priory hospitals around the country. I went to the one which was 5 minutes from my house. I didn't even know it was there the whole time I lived there, which was really funny. Someone, when they said to me, "Oh, we've got you an appointment at the Priory," I thought I was going to get in a car, a long car journey. And actually, it was like we just drove up the height, 500 meters up the road, and we're like, "Oh, we're here." It's I can only tell it from my experience. The Priory is basically a hospital. That's and people kind of need to remember that. And the people that are in there are really ill, really poorly, and I was really poorly. Stuck in a kind of mental delusion about where they're at in life and how great they are, or where things are at. And for me, it was a place in which, firstly, I could detox initially safely and kind of get my sleep back and get eating 3 meals a day. And then it was, for me, it was all group sessions. So, as you guys have read in my group, there was, drug lords, lawyers, prostitutes, vicars, the whole range. There was I thinking I was a bit better than everybody else. And, it's a very, very grounding experience to go, no, this is where we're at. And, my therapists were some of the most extraordinary people I've ever met in my life. And I owe them everything, because they listened to me ranting on in deluded ways about different things and slowed me down, and they gave me a different perspective. And really the Priory is a place where life can stop and you get a chance to re-look at where things are at. The work, it very much continues when you leave, but for me it was that kind of daily, we were in from 9 till 5. It's a bit like going to school type of thing. But it was amazing for me.
Yeah, you do mention in the book some of the people that you met there, and there's a story of Lenny that is incredible. Two people from very different walks of life, by the sound of it, and you obviously keep in touch with him. Can you sort of let us know? I know you probably can't say too much, but what happened to him and what became of him?
No, unfortunately, I'm not in touch with him anymore. He, as you tell from this book, his profession or the way he made money meant that he went through different mobile phones fairly quickly. So it was quite hard. He's always on burner mobile phones, and I kept in touch with him for a while, but then I don't know where he is now. And I say little prayers for him once in a while, that I hope him and his family are all well, and that people can judge him for what he was basically working drug gangland in Liverpool. You can judge him for that, and everyone can have their opinion on that. But for me, he was just another human being who came from a tough background. I was there, silver spoon from Millfield. This guy showed me more about humanity and compassion than most people I'd ever met. He didn't need to do that. He was a pretty scary individual at times, but he could have beat me up at school. It was that kind of character, but he was amazing, and he was just trying to get over addiction, just as I was. He was just trying to be a better man, a better father, a better husband, just like I was. And I was really grateful that he was in there when I was in there.
I think obviously people can read much more about Lenny in the book, and it was that first interaction that I thought it's such a nice story, or nice part of the story. And obviously it's your first day at the Priory. You lost all your bearings. I think at the time you're probably still feeling the effects of alcohol or whatever, and you're obviously frightened like a new puppy in a new surroundings or whatever. And this guy who happens, whatever lifestyle he's led, comes over and gives you a massive cuddle, and you just cried and cried and cried. But I think that first offer of support from someone that had never even met you or laid eyes on you before, no idea of Luke Sutton the cricketer, was just willing to offer you that kind of real basic interaction on a human level to try and comfort you in that way.
Yeah, it was amazingly powerful. And I look at some of the struggles that we're going through at the moment with COVID and all the difficulties in life, and I look back on that. And it's just exactly what you said. You know, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to make me feel better for being there. He was this tiny little guy with his skinhead and, you know, piercing eyes and terrifying with this massive puffer jacket on, broad scouser, and you know, got straight into my space basically to make me feel better. And it was, you know what, I don't know, I was lucky that that all happened to me, but I needed that grounding. I also talk about my first group session when I heard Lenny talk, and I can feel myself getting emotional about it now. I needed to hear that because he was so different to me, yet so much the same. And I walked into the Priory thinking I was a bit better than everybody else. I'd got into trouble in life thinking I was a bit better than everybody else. And I was different. You know, it was not about me, it was about you. You didn't like the way I behaved, well, that was about you. And just that experience with him and hearing him share about the same things that I deep down was terrified about, you know, I came out the Priory going, do you know what? I'm just a human being doing my best. And it was what I needed, you know. So I'm really grateful for it.
You say that, I mean, it's interesting. It comes on to this next question really nicely. You're quite reluctant to admit having a problem with alcohol for quite a long time until you actually finally went in and they kind of broke Luke Sutton to pieces in order to kind of rebuild the version 2.0, let's say, of what we kind of sit here in front of us today. If people are going through that cycle that you went through before actually, you know, either having an intervention from other people or making the decision themselves, which I imagine would be incredibly difficult for someone to say, actually, I do need to go to rehab. But if those people are out there and people are battling currently with alcohol addiction and are listening to this, what advice would you be able to offer them, having been through it yourself, to try and encourage them to seek help themselves rather than waiting for someone else to do that?
I think it's just be open, be willing, you know, to something. That's what I would say. You know, addiction narrows your world. It makes your world very, very small. The people that you surround yourself with, the way you what you do, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and it traps you in a little place that you can't get yourself out of. And what I'd say to someone, if you're in that place, I know that loneliness, I know that shame, I don't wish it on anybody, but you're not alone. And you just need to be open to listen a little bit. It doesn't mean you have to find the answer in 5 minutes, but just open up to a little bit, you know, go and see someone or listen into something or go to a recovery meeting or connect with somebody. Just be open a little bit. And that is all it takes. And then, you know, then the process can start. But it's just trying to break out of that tiny trap that addiction eventually narrows you into.
Yeah, it's you. You talk in your book about the difference in perception between current players going through a problem. People like more recent past, like Alex Hales, has obviously had his issues, and then past players, and obviously Andrew Flintoff's sort of issues have been well documented since he finished playing, and people like Robin Smith and people like that who've gone through problems. Why do you think there's such a massive difference between that kind of perception level, the people who are doing it now compared to past stars, and the positive and negatives, the way it's sort of switched?
Yeah, I think, you know, cricket was a drinking culture. You know, the one I walked into, whatever, 25 years ago, was a drinking culture. You know, it wasn't even discussed. That's the way it was. And the cricket world that Freddie Flintoff grew up in was that one that Robin Smith did, you know. And so I think there's been a kind of attitude of, well, that's just the way it is, you know, and okay, they've run into trouble. Well, you know, hey ho, that's just what we do. I think, you know, with the example I give of Alex Hales in the book, you know, whether we like it or not, drug taking is as rife in our society as drinking in many ways. You can walk into any pub in England and get yourself some cocaine or whatever it might be. But I watched the way Hales was dealt with versus some of those other things. And I'm like, I don't get that. I don't get why we're all right with one because, oh, that's just the way it is. And then there's suddenly this sort of new age problem. We're like, oh no. And then, you know, it was openly said in the media, well, we're not sure he fits our value system within the England team. Like, what? You know, I don't. Would you be saying the same if he came out and said he was a gambling addict? I don't think you would. I think it's because it's cocaine and it's drugs, and I'm in a position where I can say that. I haven't got anything to, I'm not saying it for any reason because I like someone or dislike anyone anymore. I just say it as I see it. But I think it was a dangerous territory, that, and Alex, I think, has been dealt with in a way which I don't believe would have been the same if it had been a different type of addiction.
Following on from that, do you think it's a media thing as well when it comes to sort of current and past players? Whereas a current player is, the media, or in this country certainly, seem to be looking for ways to shoot them down. And whereas past players are kind of, as soon as anyone retires, they become a better player. That's sort of a well-known aspect of anything. Mm-hmm. But do you think there's sort of, certainly within the media and society as a whole, there's this, if you're a former player, there's more of a, it's such and such, it's what he did. And whereas if you're a current player, certainly at that level, it's a look at that privileged so-and-so throwing his life away. There'd be all this many people that will give so much to do that. Do you think it's...
Yeah, I do. I mean, let's have a think about Ben Stokes. So I obviously talk about in the book as well, as maybe the most gifted cricketer that we've seen for a very long time in an England team, all round, extraordinarily exceptional. When he had got into the trouble he did in Bristol and everything that we saw, it was horrible to see. It was really, really horrible to see. And judge and jury, in lots of different ways was cast upon him, where I'd hear some people saying, well, that's just the way he is. He's a warrior on and off the field. And I was like, so were we saying that he nearly needs to get himself in jail in order to play his best cricket? Is that what we're saying? Because I missed that.
Yeah.
And also judging him and just thinking he's a bad person, and he's, he clearly needed help at that time in his life, and he clearly, people don't just behave like that out of nowhere, and if they do, they need someone to reach out to them, and that reaction to it, this kind of staunch defense of it in a weird way, and then this staunch attack of him, I didn't hear many people going, is he all right? That type of thing within the media. And I think that's where there's that gap in it. And I looked at the Ben Stokes thing. My son saw it and said to me, why is Ben Stokes fighting in the streets? And it was a tough conversation for me to process. But when I went away, I was like, he needs help. He needs help at the moment, Ben. And that's what I would like to see more of.
I think now that you're a sports agent, very successful sports agent, look after some amazing athletes. So Jimmy Anderson, you've known for years. I know him and his wife are very, very close to you. Samantha Quirk, Louis Smith, the gymnast, as well as England selector James Taylor, whose career, I think every England cricket fan was devastated. I always think that James Taylor was someone that every English cricket fan really liked and really always wanted him to do well and whatever. And unfortunately, due to a heart condition, his career was stopped way before its time, and certainly in England in a nutshell. You, I know through talking to you now, see it as, your role as an agent, it's hugely important to help talk to, your charges, let's say, about things that life will throw up to them as professional athletes. Can you just talk us through a little bit of kind of how you try to manage that, how you help JT a little bit through that situation, and how important you think that is?
Yeah, my role as an agent, I'm sure it's partly because of my own background, but I feel a great responsibility in the guys that I'm working with. They're often very young people, and it can't just be about, okay, when they're with me, we make lots of money and then you move on. I just can't live that life. I feel a greater responsibility to how they are getting on in life and how they're going to get on in post career. The James Taylor situation, I actually, out of everything that's happened to me in management, is the one I kind of look back on the proudest, really. And I now, I see him, with Ed Smith on the balcony, choosing the next team, and it looks, it's amazing. It's brilliant. And I'm almost like, it's like my son who's gone off to university, and I'm like, oh, this type of thing. But what happened to him in that period was just incredibly difficult. 26-year-old playing in all formats to suddenly nothing, no exercise, complete change of life, financial insecurity, purpose gone, motivation gone, direction gone, and the loveliest guy. And he is like a little brother to me. And there was no rule book. There was no, okay, this is how you handle it. This is not, it was just, we had to just get on with it. And to see him now having got out of that and got to where he's got to is, I think that's what management's all about.
He's a hell of a golfer now, though. I know that for a fact. He plays at Hollingwell up the road from where me and Simon live. So yeah, hoping to try and catch up with him. We share some mutual friends, so I'd love to hit the fairways with him at some point.
Well, I'm waiting. I mean, the England selector job came at a good time because I was waiting for the text message to say, "I'd like to be a professional golfer. Can we do that?" I was like, oh God, here we go.
Amazing.
He actually came to. It was quite surreal. Last year we were playing a game up at Priory, which is just North Notts, and he's obviously still friends with a lot of the guys that used to play for Notts and whatever. And I'm fielding on the boundary, and turned around, and JT was there, was watching our game with one of the opposition lads, a lad called Sam Wood that used to play for Notts. And England were playing the West Indies at the time in a Test match, and I was like thinking, surely, I mean, I thought I might have been due a call up or something. I thought he was having a look at someone to replace Jimmy Anderson with some medium pace outswingers, but nevertheless the call didn't come. But no, so obviously since moving on from what you've sort of went through, you've now got a new fiance, Jo, and things are looking very good for you. Like, what does the future hold for Luke Sutton now?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, it's not, I don't live on a fluffy cloud where nothing bad happens. There's still lots of challenges and lots of difficulties. I'm just a very different person. I'm over 9 years sober now, and I struggle to recognize the previous person in many ways. I guess I just want now my sense of purpose and happiness is very much centered around my children, Jo, being a good son to my parents, just trying to be a good member of society. I know it sounds really corny, but that's where I'm at, really. And I work in a sort of deeply commercial dog eat dog world, and my approach is very much like I'm just going to do the best job I can be the best human being I can be, and the rest will take care of itself. And I think if I'm always in that place, then overcoming difficulties or challenges and finding happiness is always there, because I'm defining myself by something a bit deeper rather than how much money I've got, or something that's tapping into my ego. And so I just feel incredibly grateful and happy. I look back on my journey, and I wish I hadn't caused the pain to some people I did, and I've had to make amends for that. But maybe I needed all of that to happen in order to get here. Maybe all that pain, and I went into rehab when I was 35. Maybe if some of those things hadn't happened, I would have got there eventually. But maybe it would have been 55, and I would really ruin my kids' lives. And I'm in some ways, I'm just glad I got to where I've got to now.
I think just to before we kind of wrap up on this bit, you say that, and that takes me back now to, there's a part in the story of the fellow, I think his name is Jonathan, who turns out, as we find out, to have been a successful lawyer, and then, he obviously reached that point later and couldn't almost pull himself out through that recovery process. So, which obviously you've done incredibly successfully. You must look at that and almost realise, think how thankful you are that, people did make that intervention at that time, and it didn't just carry on for another 10 or 15 years, by which point it may have been too late.
Yeah, and I think the line between someone, getting it and not getting it, or, is very, very thin. I don't sit in judgment on anyone like that, not at all. But for the grace of God go I, is the kind of saying. It's like there's in Hale, where I used to live, that there was a tramp who was a guy that I knew from recovery, and I'd come out, get out of my car, and he'd be begging on the street, and I'd see him and I knew who he was, and I'd think, that could be me. I know that sounds dramatic now and unbelievable, but it could have been. I was toxic before I went into the Priory, and I was ruining everything. And the line between getting recovery and not is really, really fine. And I I don't know why today why some people are able to get on it and other people not. I think there has to be something that breaks in you that goes, I can't keep doing this enough. It's like enough. I can't. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm done. But some people don't get to that place, and unfortunately, in Jonathan's case, he was a massive teacher for me with what happened to him. But it was a guy who died far too early and left behind 2 boys and and a wife, and it's just tragic to see that.
So we're going to, Luke, thank you, amazing for your insight. I think your honesty is absolutely incredible. This is Luke's first book, which is Back from the Edge, which goes through it in great detail. It's an incredible read. As I said earlier on, I couldn't put it down. I needed the loofah, the entire time. The dog ate my dinner, but I was just so engrossed in it. Get involved. Luke very kindly has signed 2 copies. And we will be sending those out. We'll come up with a competition that we will run for the listeners, but the 2 signed copies available of this. Luke has also sent us a couple of copies of his second book, which is The Life of a Sports Agent, but we're not going to give those away now, because if we did, he wouldn't be then forced to come back on and talk us through that one. So we've got a second interview out of him, if nothing else. Luke, I don't know if I told you about this or not, so this might be that curveball that I told you weren't going to get. We do 5 questions for the Lord's Taverners at the end of each interview. So we will ask you 5 questions that the chances that these may be quite easy for you. I don't know. It depends how stats-based you are. But each one's worth £2. So if you get all 5 wrong, you owe the Lord's Taverners a tenner.
No problem.
One of us 3 has to match it.
Okay.
So we now will play rock, paper, scissors.
Okay.
I know it's not Eugene. Oh, Eugene's ducked out, so it's just between me and Simon.
I'll go this week because I think Luke's going to be all right. I'll go this week because you went last week.
We'll match whatever your outlay is. So it's added, up to £20 for the Lord's Taverners, which would be amazing. So, question number 1, Mr. Sutton. How many professional games did you play across all formats? So first class, List A, and T20 total.
Have I got to get this exactly right?
Yes.
I've absolutely no chance. Across all formats, I'm going to say 386.
Oh, you got the first one right.
First bit
it was
right.
303.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
I just gave myself another 83 games. So.
Yeah.
What was it? What was your T20 strike rate?
Oh God, no! This is terrible. I'm like, I'm so unstat based. it was surprisingly high. That's what I used to always think. Like it was. I used to look at it and think, how have I done that? Bear in mind, I could barely get it off the square. It was like 123 or something.
Oh, 107.3.
Oh right, sorry, there was a 3.
Still better than a run of ball.
This is this whole retirement thing where I'm getting better in retirement. All my numbers are getting higher.
It happens to everyone.
Yeah. How many? And this is an amazing stat. How many career dismissals?
I'm paying the full whack here. In all formats.
Yeah. 499.
Oh, you've undersold yourself. You've got worse in retirement on that one. 727.
Really? Oh,
that's amazing. Yeah.
I'll take that.
So I think you might. The last 2 we went a bit kinder on you. I think in your last game against Surrey at the Oval, a pretty nice play to play your last first class game. How many runs and dismissals did you get in that game? Can you remember?
I didn't get many runs. I reckon I got 4 runs. And I reckon I got 2 dismissals.
Oh, you got 37 runs.
Did I? Oh my
God.
You only got 5 in the second dig following on.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was 3 dismissals.
3. Okay.
Pragyan Oja got you on it. You got 6 for spit in the second.
Yeah. I remember him bowling me. I don't know. I was not in a great way by that point in my journey. That was the last. Yeah, I was about a month from getting in the Priory. I just genuinely did not know where the ball was going. So I think I did quite well to get 37.
Yeah.
And finally, you got a red inker in your last T20 batting at number 11. A name that you wouldn't necessarily expect to open the batting opened with Michael Divenuto. Who was that man?
Michael Divenuto. Goodness me.
Hang on a minute. Was this first or last T20?
Oh, first T20. Sorry,
It was first T20.
First T20.
2003.
Okay. Yeah, I remember. I know it was at Yorkshire. It would be.
It's £2 on this.
Oh no. Sorry.
£4 because I'm putting in as well.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry about this. I've really sunk you here.
Really not a problem.
Nathan Dumelow.
No, but that's a fine guess. Dominic Thorpe.
Oh, of course he was. He was captain.
It's all right, lads. It's all right, lads. I'll just hop out first.
I just, if we've got time, I've got this. That first 2020 game always made me laugh because there was this rule then that you only had a certain amount of time to get your 20 overs in. It was like an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Big talk before the game, like, we've got an hour and 15, lads. This is tight. We're going to have to do it. We did our 20 overs in 45 minutes. We were like, it was like a 45-minute aerobic session, and we got battered everywhere. So they were like, they're getting hit. We're getting hit for 6 into stands. Lads were jumping into the crowd, running, getting the ball. I mean, we broke the world record for 20 overs ever done.
Amazing. Brilliant. On that note, Luke, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your openness, your honesty. The book is amazing, guys. Please just get involved, read it. It's an amazing read. You will learn so much from it. I certainly have, as I said, I texted Luke about the other day. It forces everybody to kind of look internally about themselves a little bit, and you will come out of it as a better person having read it. As I say, we've got 2 signed copies that we'll make available through a competition. But yeah, Luke, thanks again. We look forward to having you back on to discuss more in depth about your life as a sport agent in 2021.
Pleasure. And I promise I'll do a bit of research about my stats to do a bit better than that.
I was going to say we've got to come up with 5 different questions. So
we've seen I've set the bar so low. So yeah, we'll see.
To be fair, in the guests so far, I think there's only been one person that's not got them all wrong. So
okay.
Yeah, but no, thank you again, Luke. That was really good. Thank you.
Pleasure. Look forward to coming back.
Looking for a new cricket equipment partner for yourself or your club can sometimes be tricky. With so many options to choose from, how do you make the right choice? When you want quality, value and service, there really is only one place to start. For more than a decade, Woodstock Cricket have been producing award-winning, high-performance cricket bats from their Shropshire workshop. Matched with their classy soft goods, luggage and accessories, Woodstock Cricket really do tick all the boxes. Get in touch with Woodstock Cricket and find out why many loyal clubs, players and international customers can't be wrong at info@woodstockcricket.co.uk.
Thank you to our sponsors, partners, Woodstock Cricket, for their continued support. That was obviously a note from them. And that was the interview with Luke Sutton. Now, lads, I don't know what you think. We the 3 of us read his book before we went about that interview. And I'll be honest, as we discussed off air earlier, it's had a bit of a profound effect on me in terms of the way that Luke looks at things and, just reflects on certain parts of his life and certain things that he's done and what have you. I found it's an amazing read. It's quite a tough read in places because it is so brutally honest. But I think the fact that it can't, the way I looked at it, and it made me look inwardly at myself, it can't be only me that it would have that effect on. I mean, what do you guys think? Firstly, of the book, but then also like the interview.
Yeah, from my perspective, firstly, I didn't think anybody could be more positive than Simon Jones, who we had on last week. Looking at the way Luke approaches life now, it just gets better and better from our point of view. it's also probably one of the only times that I've actually got emotional talking to somebody or hearing from somebody, because you guys did the interview. I was part of it. But from my perspective, yeah, I got quite emotional in it. Obviously, reading the book, you get quite emotional. And then, yeah, I'll be honest, I shed a bit of a tear during that interview. It was either some onions, or he genuinely had an effect on me. So yeah, I think he did an effect.
Di?
Yeah.
I think that it was amazing. And the one thing that we're getting, whether it was Simon Jones' interview, Luke's interview, the stuff with Toby at the start, and we are getting brutal honesty from these guys, which is refreshing to hear. And we are by no means qualified psychologists in any way. We just listen to people, we talk to people, and we hope people enjoy listening to what we're talking about. But the one thing it's really made me think, obviously my story came out in episode 3. And each time we've done an interview, I've put links in, tried to relate it back to my own thing. Like I say, I'm not professional. I just sit here and listen and go, right, I can relate to this. And the two things that are sort of regular in what's coming out is this thing about identity that we seem to be having. We had it a bit with Simon last week. Obviously with Luke, when he talks about this wanting to be the best and this desire to be the best at whatever he does, and that's part of his identity, and that led him to the downfall. Obviously the stuff with me, which was, I became this cricketer type person. But it's this fact that people get themselves into this situation where it's this kind of identity crisis, that they're not quite sure who they are, what they're about, and how to deal with that, which I found really interesting. And the second part was the two things he said about what to say to people who you think might be going through that, and what to say if you think you might be going to that, or that approach. So what he said to people about if you've got friends is keep being positive. Mm-hmm. And that was something that I could relate to very much so, because I always felt I was letting people down, and I didn't need a bollocking, because that just exaggerated the fact. And I related to so much of his story in my experiences and things like that. And the second thing that he said was, if someone's going through that, and I really struggled with this when you asked me this question, John, it was, what would I say to me back then? Because at the time, and I didn't have a clue what I'd be open to. But what he said was, be open to help. I knew I had a problem. Like, same as Luke said, he knew he had a problem. The people that we've spoke to, there's an issue. But it's knowing where to go with that, and knowing to be open, or getting that mindset of being open to going, right, I'm open to this change, I'm open to trying this, I'm open to this conversation, which hopefully with what Luke did in talking to us about it and what he's done in writing a book will come through, and people being open about it and being honest. For me, I'm sorry I've rambled on in answering your question there, but obviously we know it's something I'm quite passionate about, but like it just, that really got me. Like, be open. I think if everyone can just be more open about this type of thing, whether it be alcoholism, mental health, I know for me it's all one big thing that encompasses how it comes out, whether it comes out through alcoholism, whether it comes out through drugs, whether it comes out through depressive tendencies, whatever. It's all one big similar thing. And the more we can be open about it and talk about it, the better we're going to be in dealing with it. So, sorry, I think
one of the massive things that I think is a huge positive from Luke's point of view is he's now obviously completely turned around his life. I think he's 9 years without a drink now, which is phenomenal. But not only has he turned his own life around, he is now having a profound positive effect on the people that he now manages in his role as a sports agent. So Louis Smith, gymnast; Samantha Queck, Olympic gold or silver medalist from the GB hockey team; James Taylor, who obviously we're getting to know reasonably well. Having gone through that, heart problem that ended his cricket career. And Luke is now in a position where he gets to have positive effect in his role as their mentor, come agent, come whatever you want to call it. And he says it made it abundantly clear that and we asked him, didn't we, very openly about it. does he see that as part of his role? Of course, he sees it as a big part of his role to try and help guide his charges through these difficult situations that life will throw up at them. Luke has written a second book, which you'll have heard in the interview. We're quite keen to get him to come on and talk about that in a separate interview. We didn't want to kind of cloud the two or confuse the two messages, if you like. So we obviously kept this first interview very separate. We do have 2 copies of his book, Back from the Edge, 2 signed copies, which he's very kindly offered to give away as part of a competition. The way in which we are going to offer those out, it will be a social media competition. So there will be more details of that released in the next couple of days. So probably tomorrow, which will be Friday, with this coming out on Thursday. But yeah, look, everybody who listens to this, if you're within that first 24-hour period, enter that competition, because if you are one of the 2 people that gets a free copy of this book, it's life changing for me. As I said, it's made me look at a few different aspects of different things, and within that 10-day period since we recorded the interview, it's given me a completely different outlook on a number of things. So it's brilliant. So yes, thank you very much to Luke Sutton. I would like to say thank you again this week to my 2 wonderful co-hosts, Simon Roberts. Thank you, Simon.
My absolute pleasure. This week was very, very special, to be fair. That's one of the best interviews. If we do better interviews than that, or more honest interviews than that, then we're doing the right thing. So absolute pleasure to be part of it this week.
And Eugene Berger, thanks, Eugene.
No problem, Jono. And yeah, couldn't agree with Si anymore. You know what I love about this so far is the positivity that is coming out from all of the people that are listening, from the conversations that we've been having. I know the 3 of us have been getting feedback from mates, from random people via our social media streams, whether it be YouTube, whether it be Instagram, whether it be Twitter, whether it be Facebook. Yeah, absolutely. I think thank you very much for the feedback, but more importantly, keep talking about it. Keep talking to people about what's going on in your life and sharing your, I don't want to say your challenges, but sharing the good and the bad. It's always nice to hear some positive news, as well as just sharing the struggle that you're going through, whatever it may be, especially during the holidays.
I think just to finish, we released another blog post this week, and there was a bit in there about Ben Stokes and Ben Stokes being only human, and that I wrote that blog post this week, and I think it's really important that people remember that Ben Stokes is only human, and Ben Stokes has lost his dad in the last few days, and will be feeling exactly the same thoughts that any other man, woman, or child in the world would feel at losing their father or someone close to them. The 3 of us don't know Ben Stokes, but if there's anybody listening to this who does, I will reiterate the message: get in touch, because I'm found profoundly of the view that it's better to say something and never be thanked than never to say anything at all. And I think that runs across everything we're trying to do. We've made some real positive effects on people already. Certainly Simon's story, in terms of the contacts we've had, we've been helping people by listening to their stories and talking to them and pointing them in the right directions. Conversations can make a massive, massive difference to how people are feeling. So reach out to your mates, make sure they're all right. Look, a lot of joy in life, but sometimes people go through some pretty tough shit. So be the person that makes that positive change for people. Guys, thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to watch this on YouTube. Engage with us on social media. Sign up to the blog on our website, slogginit.co.uk. Love each other, and we will join you again next week. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks, John. Thanks, Si.
Cheers, boys.